I'm sorry, Deep Focus Lens can't come to the phone right now because this movie broke her. Hello, everybody. Today I am going to be reviewing The Rise of Skywalker. This film came out in 2019, and it was directed by J.J. Abrams. Yeah, I know that this movie came out a long time ago. I realize that I am extremely late to the party on this one, but yeah, I just now saw this film. Oh, I was very aware of the backlash at the time by the general public. I think who wasn't, honestly. But yeah, at the time, I really wasn't in the mood to watch it, and I just didn't feel like subjecting myself to that kind of depression. But if you are a regular follower, then you know I have kind of been delving back into my past, and I've been delving a little bit more into Star Wars from the very beginning. I went back and reviewed A New Hope not so long ago, so I don't know, I just felt like I couldn't let this gap exist. You know, I had to complete the full circle. I really try not to go in with a lot of expectations before I go into a movie, but with this one, it was kind of hard to avoid that, and yeah, I walked in genuinely thinking it's likely going to be a dumpster fire. I am likely going to strongly dislike it, but Jesus Christ, I was not prepared for this. I really wasn't, and I was so overwhelmed by just the amount of stupid in this movie that I honestly don't even know where to begin. It felt like somebody just dumped a pile of trash in front of me after I saw the movie and was like, okay, sort through this, make sense of it. And yeah, it took some time. And when I watched it, it felt like I was attending a funeral, hence my attire right now. Really, how does one describe the experience of watching this movie? The best thing I can think of to equate it to would be like being pulverized by water. Just a ton of water endlessly and it won't stop. But you know, I think we should recap the trilogy just a little bit because it has been a long time since I've kind of reviewed it all. But it is an interesting journey. When I say interesting, I mean it's a Shakespearean tragedy, really. But you know, obviously George Lucas sold the franchise to what he calls the White Slavers, which I find very interesting. Corporation Disney, he means there. And really, his involvement is non-existent at this point in the big scheme of things. And I do believe that he's moved on for sure, somewhat. But I also think he kind of pretends like he's moved on more than he actually has, because I do see a lot of bitterness, especially when he talks about it, and rightfully so. Force Awakens came out in what, 2015, something like that, and it really just felt kind of like a regurgitated version of A New Hope. It has a lot of the same beats, a lot of the emotional elements in it, and you know, some things were added that were new that I didn't particularly care for, especially the way it brings back old characters from the original trilogy in a way that doesn't feel consistent with the original characters, and I think it kind of says something overall in a grander metaphor. But you know, it's fine. It's a solid film. I remember enjoying it when I initially saw it. And I will say, though, it did give me a new appreciation for the prequels, which is something I never thought I would say. I still think they are heavily flawed films, and I don't think they are particularly good overall. But, you know, at least they tried to be different. At least they tried to separate themselves from the original trilogy. It's not riding on the fumes of previous success in such a desperate way, the way that I think Disney does it. But it was a hit, and you know, I do understand why, for sure. But now in hindsight, I think people view that film a little bit differently. I certainly do, especially after The Last Jedi came out, which of course is directed by Rian Johnson, and many people do consider that the death of Star Wars, and it's pointedly using a lot of different elements throughout that absolutely end the Star Wars legacy as we know it. Now, I admit, at the time I reviewed this film, I maybe wasn't in the right headspace to be reviewing Star Wars. At the time, I was very cynical about it. It was basically dead to me at the time. So I approached everything in a very negative, sort of cynical way. And I will own up to that because I did admire aspects of the film. And to be honest with you, I still do admire certain aspects of the film. I do think aesthetically it's one of the more remarkable Star Wars films. The artistry of it is really kind of amazing, I think. I think the creativity of the worlds can be somewhat innovative. You know, I do admire that it went for a little bit more of the darkness, the gray areas, exploring good and evil. Like I said, I cannot admire it, especially now with this hindsight, especially reviewing it in a different way, kind of giving it a chance and removing a bit of the cynicism, just because it's such a sharp turn and in a very wrong direction, in my opinion. It feels very mean-spirited to me. I'm all about taking risks, and I'm all about surprising people and trying to be different. Again, that's part of why I admire aspects of the prequels, and it's also something that J.J. Abrams seems incapable of doing as a filmmaker. But it's hard for me to get behind it, again, if it feels like self-sabotage. And watching that film, you get a strong sense that Rian Johnson doesn't care for Star Wars at all, and that's not a good thing. And J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson work together just about as well as oil and water, and that's a huge problem. So I think Rian Johnson left Abrams in a very difficult position with this third film. So he's undoing what was done in The Force Awakens, and now JJ is trying to undo what happened in The Last Jedi, and it's all just a mess. And it feels like he's completely written into a corner here. And to a degree, I almost feel bad for him. You kill off your main villain, and you destroy the integrity of Luke Skywalker and all the dignity, for sure. And you destroy a lot of iconic elements of Star Wars, and then you leave the final installment just stranded from a climactic perspective. Because how do you build from that? Because it's just a bunch of pieces, it feels like. But as I said, and I stand by it, I do not feel bad for J.J. Abrams. I do not feel bad for Kathleen Kennedy. I don't feel bad for any of them, because they're such whipping boys when it comes to just how obsessed they are with corporate interest and how obsessed they are with how they are perceived. But this film represents the death of a lot of things to me, and you might think I'm going overboard with it, and maybe I am, but just the industry of Star Wars as it exists and how it has grown, it's so much more than a film. It's so much more than an idea at this point. And naturally, I feel like this is a historic marker, I think, in the state of things. Now the story is slowly dissolving and kind of becoming fragmented, and we're just churning out an assembly line of content for money, and merchandise, and we're kind of beholden to Reddit threads and fanboys to decide how we need to write things, rather than having, the balls, the grit, the creativity that I desire from art. I think a lot of people say that George Lucas's Star Wars, his original baby Star Wars, probably died with The Last Jedi, as I said. And if that is the case, then this movie, The Rise of Skywalker, is basically taking the corpse and forcing it to like dance around. It's really creepy, and I know I equate a lot of these franchises and how they've developed over time. I equate them all to like Norman Bates and his mother, that kind of corpse situation there. But I mean, this one, I really think it takes it to a whole new level. But I want you to always remember, if you are somebody that is interested in making movies, you're interested in some aspect of the film industry, whether you want to be a director or you're a really great writer, you have an original voice, an original story to tell. I want you to remember this film and remember just how unfair it is that something like this, it can be made for this much money. This actually got approved and went through likely multiple teams, multiple board members to be approved, and it still made it to theaters, and it made tons and tons of money. Always. Remember that. Oh, I am convinced that whoever wrote this was not above the age of 10 years old. I know it says that J.J. Abrams wrote it, and he co-wrote it with the Academy Award-winning writer of Argo. But I don't believe it. I think they probably threw it to a niece or nephew and said, like, hey kid, you like Star Wars, go crazy. Because when you start discussing the plot in any sort of detail, it feels like trying to make sense of like a third grader's class assignment who is majorly ADD. And this movie is so shameless in its metaphors that it takes them to literal levels. Like when I say this is like reviving a corpse, Norman Bates style, like Psycho. Oh, they take that very literally. They actually bring back the corpse of Palpatine. But seriously, how does this not sound like what I said? Like, how does it not sound like it was written by a very small child? It's like, oh, I know how we can save this whole thing. I know our major villain is gone, which was basically a stand-in for Palpatine anyway. Let's just bring back Palpatine. Oh, we can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, we can do it. We can. He is the Sith Lord of all Sith Lords. He's like all of them combined, and he's like, and he'll just bring this army of 1 billion Star Destroyers and be like, ha, I've got you all. And when they go, that sounds interesting. Yeah, let's go with that. But wait, we need to know how he came back. We have to know. Just somehow somehow he returned. Yeah, let's go with that. The script represents everything wrong with modern movie scripts by my estimation, and of course so much more. Nothing is oriented in character development. Nothing is oriented in world building, what it means to be a hero, what it means to have risks and stakes and high emotion. And this has the dressing of Star Wars, like aesthetically and all that. It has the texture of the Star Wars that we grew up with, that we know and love. But it's such a train wreck. It's such a perplexing thing that I instantly just reject it completely. Like when the new characters in this film do something heroic by the film's estimation, and suddenly you hear like the majestic Star Wars theme, I'm like, no, stop. You do not deserve to use this music. You do not deserve John Williams. You don't deserve any of these iconic elements of Star Wars, because they are not yours. Because you've proven that you cannot have nice things, Disney, because you shit all over it and then you don't even try to hide it. I mean, like I said, it's so shameless, and that is what's perplexing about it. And it's also weird because there's such an angle of desperation to it at the same time. It's like they're wanting to give the fans everything that they crave, to the point of no tension, no creativity whatsoever. But this movie, it's just so overwhelming. So much is going on all at once. It feels like we're multiverse hopping, and you're not supposed to feel that way in this movie. At least I don't think you're supposed to feel that way. But yeah, it feels like dust slipping through your fingers, and you can't grip onto anything solid, anything that means anything. There'll be a moment where, oh, something really heavy and emotional is happening, like Chewbacca is dying, or we think he's dying, but we can't even sit with that emotion, with that feeling of loss for more than 2 minutes before it's like, oh, no, he's still alive. Don't worry, audience. We're not allowed to have a moment of honest emotion without, using some sort of easy joke, or, like I said, an easy fake out like they do with Chewbacca. And it feels like J.J. Abrams is taking me by the hand. It's like using my own hand and slapping me with it and being like, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. And I'm like, fuck you. How stupid do you think we are? I get it. I get that you're ashamed of the last one. And, I certainly would be too, but you can't pretend it doesn't exist. It's like a body being on the floor, and you just put a sheet over it and say, nothing to see here. You need real stakes, and you need a real conclusion to this whole Skywalker legacy. But how can you have any grit or any stakes when your main character, Rey, is a girl boss? She never has to really struggle with anything in the film. There's no issue she has where we don't know already that she's going to get out of it just fine, unscathed. She feels like she deserves to stand on the graves of those who came before her without doing any of the work, just because girl power. The female characters are not allowed to be flawed. They're not allowed to be complicated for fear of offending people. And she could have been a really great character. Finn could have been a great character. Poe could have been a really great character. And those dynamics they could have built throughout all 3 of the films, so that when we get to this film, it's all been established. But no, they didn't know how to build those characters throughout. And so by the time we get to this one, it's like, I don't give a shit about any of it. And it's also really hard to care about characters and care about stakes in any form when there's such an easy and convenient solution to everything. Like this movie, anytime you have a question, anytime you're confused about something, they all just say, oh, it's because of a feeling. Why did that happen? It was a feeling. Every incentive to move the plot forward here is like baby's first MacGuffin, and it honestly makes something like National Treasure look like Citizen Kane. But a question I do ask myself is, could a good movie, a solid, cohesive movie, be built out of the rubble that was The Last Jedi? And I really don't know the answer to that question, but I do absolutely think that something could have been made that is better than this. Much better than this, with some moments that are satisfying. As an example, Snoke dies in the second film, and nobody really cared about him, so it's neither here nor there. But, we do have this big problem of we don't have that major villain. But rather than making it all about Palpatine in this really nonsensical way, it's like, no, focus it in a little bit more, make it more intimate, and start how you began it with The Force Awakens, and bring it back to Kylo Ren as the villain. To me, this is the only solution we have here. Him not being that obstacle for Rey to have her self-actualization, to me, is a big wasted opportunity and a huge mistake, because I don't know, I think it would have been interesting because of the way they've built it. There were interesting elements in both Force Awakens and The Last Jedi where it's kind of like this weird connection between Rey and Kylo Ren, where it's like, oh, she has some tendencies that are in the dark side and so does he. So I think it could be interesting for them to kind of share that. And then maybe out of that, that's where the self-actualization happens. But no, they don't have the faith in the audience or the faith in the creativity, the integrity of anything at all, as I've already established a million times. It's just, this is pure aimlessness. This is one of the more cowardly films I have seen in a very, very, very long time. It is the cinematic equivalent to the phrase, "My dog ate my homework and I'm just winging it today." And then you get to the final scene, which is one of the most bone-chilling moments, I think, ever. It's so nauseating when we realize that Rey is Palpatine and she goes back to Tatooine for some reason. Again, none of it is explained, and she calls herself Rey Skywalker in the end. It's like a giant representation of Disney and what they did with George Lucas. It's like somebody coming in and buying something from someone, but in the process they are burying the dignity of something that was original and rebellious and unique and special. And yeah, literally, they're burying it in the sand here. And then walking off into the sunset, stealing the original name. My mouth was open wide and I was able to avoid spoilers all this time, so I didn't know that was coming, and it's kind of stunning, the impact of that ending on me. I really can't stop thinking about it. All the credit in the world to Daisy Ridley that she had to say that, probably multiple takes, and she had to try and be convincing, say it with a straight face without throwing up in her mouth, and I really do commend the actors in this film because there's a lot of really strong performances here. And for Star Wars, it's not, you know, they're not known for their performances. And I really feel like they did their best. They were really, really trying here to make this terrible dialogue seem non-offensive. That is one of the huge things about this film, is like there's so much talent accumulated here. There's just so many, like this film, if there's one good thing about it, it looks incredible. Every location, every image, it's like you can see all the work that went into it. You can see all that time and money up on the screen. It's such a waste of some of the most talented artists in the world. They deserve so much better than this. And yeah, like, you know, it is all just a perfect representation of a crumbling industry. I can see it all crumbling in slow motion as I watch the film. We are completely paralyzed, it seems, by this need to be politically correct while also pleasing fans, while also trying not to obliterate all creativity and all originality in the process, you'd hope. But yeah, it seems that they just butcher it all regardless, and they don't seem to learn anything when they make mistakes. They just kind of remain in this denial. So long as it's marketable, who cares? It's haunting, you feel numb to it, and at a certain point, the thing that was so original and so special ceases to be original anymore, and ceases to be special anymore. And I think that is the true tragedy. And sure, not all of it is crap. You know, I think there is good content that's come out, I'm sure, but all the warnings, all the red flags are not lost on, I think, the majority of people. And yes, I have rarely in my life seen such a fail this monumental. And it's, as I said, stunning, and it broke me. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I am an artist and I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that's something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. If you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I would like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.